Welcome to No More Desire, where we build a mindset and lifestyle for lasting recovery from porn. My name's Jake Castleman, and I'm excited to dive in with you. Let's get started, my friend.
We're on our way home. It's a Sunday. We got to about Baker, California. My daughter then, which she was 13 at the time, she had my phone in the back seat. She came upon a couple of tabs that I had failed. You know, out of all of the things that I had done my whole life, it failed to close out. And she saw a couple of things that concerned her, obviously. It's the day where relief begins. It's also the day where the bomb drops on the other party. Their feet are swept out from underneath them, and what they thought they knew has suddenly become sand.
It's not just, oh, I had this problem you didn't know about. It's, I have been lying to you for, what?
Just almost 21 years. She wrote feverishly for a couple of hours. On one side, listing her fears. On the other side, listing her hopes.
Before we dive in, a quick heads up. If you're tired of trying to quit porn on your own and ending up back in the same cycle over and over, the No More Desire Academy is now open. Most men don't stay stuck because they lack willpower, my friend. They stay stuck because they don't have an effective system yet that they're following. The Academy has been in development for years as I've worked with men throughout the world. It is my new structured recovery program for men who want more than just information or accountability. Inside, I help men build lasting freedom using weekly coaching, a private brotherhood, practical tools, and step-by-step training. These help you get to the root of cravings, relapse, and the deeper patterns that are keeping you stuck. This is for men who are ready to stop fighting alone and start building recovery alongside other men in a structured recovery path. When you join before May 1st, you will lock in the founding member rate of $130 per month for life. After that, the price goes up to $150. Head to nomordesire.com/academy to learn more. All right, back to the episode. It's that moment where what a man has kept hidden finally comes to light. Not gradually, not on his terms, but all at once. For some men, it's a random Tuesday night. For others, it's a moment they never saw coming, like sitting in a car on a long drive home from a family trip. And in that moment, it's not just, I have a problem. It's, I've been living a double life. What most people don't understand is that porn addiction isn't just about the behavior. It's about the weight of a secret life carried for years and sometimes decades. It's the slow erosion of who you are. It's losing passion, losing presence, losing connection, while doing everything you can to still look like a good man on the outside. And it's this weight of this double life that can crush your spouse. Most of the time, the men who struggle with this aren't bad men. They're men with values, men who believe in God, in family, in integrity. But somewhere along the way, they were never taught how to understand their sexuality, only how to suppress it, avoid it, feel ashamed of it. And when you combine high standards with silence and with shame, you don't get freedom, you get secrecy, you get isolation, and eventually you get stuck in addiction a lot of times. Today's episode is a raw, honest conversation with my friend Todd, a man who carried this for over 30 years before everything came to the surface. We're going to talk about what that moment was like, what it cost him, and more importantly, what it took to finally step out of the shadows and begin real recovery. Before we dive in, a reminder to follow this podcast and shoot me a rating so that others who are looking for help can find it, and hit that notification button so that you can keep finding it. All right, let's dive in. Todd Smithson, welcome, my friend. It's so great to have you, man.
Great to be here with Jake.
Yeah. It's so cool to have a close friend and a neighbor on the podcast. This is actually the first time that I've ever done this. A fellow man in recovery, right? With years of sobriety under his belt and someone who can share their story. And this is something I'm excited about, man. So excited about. So I want to start there with just you telling your story. First off, it takes some courage to come on here, and I love the vulnerability and your willingness to do that. So let's just dive into kind of your upbringing. We're focusing on conservative and Christian culture, right? And how, unfortunately and inadvertently, as we grow up within a conservative and Christian culture, how this can actually feed into things like porn and sex addiction. None of us mean for this. And there are so many things that are so good. I love my Christian faith, as you do as well. But I want to talk about how that fed into your own addiction behind the scenes, the shame, the fear, and then also the other aspects of your story, man, and just whatever you want to share. You know who listens to this, so people would just love to know you, man.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on. It's the second time I've been on a podcast episode to talk about it. Once with my therapist, who I was very fortunate to come upon through a couple of trials and errors. This was starting about I'll give an exact date. So July 18th, just as I think every story, you could start back at the beginning. I'm actually going to start where my story started to be told.
Hmm.
And then we'll circle back to where it comes from. So July 18th, 2021, we're on our way home. It's a Sunday, and we just finished a 7-day trip in Carlsbad, California, which has been a tradition for our family and extended family on my wife's side. So this was the trip back home. So we got to about Baker, California, which is just about an hour and a half outside of Las Vegas.
Yep, I know the place.
Long stretch of road there. It's,
Yeah,
with
not
nothing to see.
not a whole lot.
Not a whole lot. So my daughter then, which she was 13 at the time, she had my phone in the back seat, along with my son was back there just kind of minding his own business on his phone, watching shows, listening to music. And she was on my phone, didn't have her own at that point, and so was kind of tooling around. And as a result of that, she came upon a couple of tabs that I had failed. You know, out of all of the things that I had done my whole life, it failed to close out. And she saw a couple of things that concerned her, obviously. And if she were here, we could tell you the challenge it was for her to actually speak up and say something. She wondered if it was her place or if she should say something. So fortunately, she did. She had the courage. She texted my wife, who was sitting next to me in the front seat, and said, "Hey, Mom, I saw a couple things on Dad's phone that is kind of concerning." So Baker, we pull off, get to the rest stop there, and my wife, in just a bit of confusion, trying to figure out how she should say it, just said it and told me that our daughter had seen that and said, what's going on? And I was 49 years old then. I'm 53 now. And it was high time that I was tired of pretending that I didn't have a problem. So I just said, yes, I've had a lifelong problem. And
Wow.
that
Yeah.
resulted in a 6.5 hour ride from there to home that probably felt more like 6 weeks.
Yes, that is one of the things I'm thinking about is the timing on this stuff sometimes out of the blue, completely unexpected, but it's that moment where you say, okay, I'm caught and it's time for me to divulge this. And on a California trip in Baker.
Yeah.
So then you you share this story with a therapist. How does that come about? And you actually, did you get on a podcast shortly after that, or this is years later that you got on another show and shared this?
So that's, again, July 18th. So that would be officially what is referred to in 12-step circles and things as D-Day.
Right. Yep.
It's the day where relief begins for the perpetrator, the addict. It's also the day where the bomb drops on the other party, where their whole world their feet is swept out from underneath them, and what they thought they knew has suddenly become kind of sand.
Yes. And all the lies. This is one of the things that's hard for a lot of guys to understand. And I don't know how you related to it at the time, but it's not just, oh, I have this problem you didn't know about. It's, I have been lying to you for 20 years or whatever it's been.
Married for, we're 25 years now. So just almost 21 years.
Almost 21 years. And some guys I work with, they're in their 60s, right? When their wives find out. So I've been doing this for 40 years. And so all this crushing weight begins to hit the betrayed partner over the days and weeks and months following of, how did I not know this? How could I have been so foolish? Sometimes that's one of the beliefs that comes up. Can I trust anything that my husband says he is, or anything that he says to me? What was this like at that time for her and kind of for you in working with her through this? Was it quite messy? It ranges all over the map. So I'd love to hear a little more about what this was like for you guys.
Yeah, personality wise, neither one of us in our marriage, we would both say that we had a happy marriage.
That's good.
Low conflict. Neither one of us are high conflict people. So not looking for a fight. We could talk, but I think that the depths of our souls, maybe on both sides, had yet to be
divulged. Yeah.
Divulged, yeah. Certainly mine. So there's a couple of miracles that probably happened in that process. One of which, I wish that you could see the notebook that she started immediately in the car from Baker to start to write.
Oh, wow.
She wrote feverishly for a couple of hours. On one side, listing her fears. On the other side, listing her hopes.
That shows incredible strength. It's so crucial for spouses to go through that process. I'm amazed that she so quickly took the initiative to do that.
And one of her fears immediately was, what does this mean about our marriage? What does it also mean about whether I wanted her? Okay, so she was immediately thinking, well, does this mean that she no longer wants to be married to me? She didn't. It was interesting that she didn't necessarily go directly to, I'm done with him.
Maybe he's done with me.
Yeah. So as we probably drove for, I don't know, it'd probably been 30 or 45 minutes from Baker. And, tears are running down my eyes. We're both in silence, turmoil, heads turned away, not because I think we hated each other necessarily, but we just didn't know what to say. And we had 2 kids in the back, so it probably wasn't the appropriate time to have a conversation. But in the midst of that, I certainly didn't feel it was my place to extend anything to her. But through the darkness of the moment, the proverbial metaphorical darkness, she reached her left hand over and set it on my leg.
Wow.
And I took her hand. And we probably held hands for, I would guess, probably 15 minutes or so, with silence, nothing said. It was just more an unspoken extension, a first kind of olive branch of, I'm still here.
That's grace, man.
Yep.
Mm.
So then when we got home, it was Sunday night. It was we sat down because she was hysterical in tears upstairs, and kids are asking what's going on. So we sat down together in the living room, and I shared my history with them
Oh my gosh. All that night.
all that night. So
What was that like?
it was both relieving and terrifying. Um, our kids, did nothing but extend their love back to me, and in the hopes, and I'm not sure what was going through their head. It wasn't a time that they spoke a lot of their feelings and trying to process it. I think our daughter probably she she had the most to go through because she was the discovery person, and what it meant about being in that position, but also her image of a dad and all of those feelings that go on. So that's, and then I immediately called ecclesiastical leader to meet Monday morning, and I went and started a process of further confession uh, to involve other parties, of which at that point in my life, it was 35 years of silence. So this wasn't, and there are others that I've heard, but some have had the experience of maybe hit or miss having some conversations with somebody along the way that knew that. I never had a single conversation from
Mm.
from the time I was exposed at 10. It was a secret.
What
And
was that? What was that like carrying that secret for you for 35 years, Todd?
I mean, like you go through periods of time of really attending to the ability to conceal, learning how to hide it, so
Mhm.
to preserve some type of image that is worth caring for. And then there's times where you're completely worn down and on the edge of saying, I've got to come forward. I can't live like this anymore. This double life is just too difficult.
Yes. And I think one of the things I think about, Todd, is how this is the case with anything that we need to hide, right? This is specifically with pornography, and this is such a heavy weight for so many of us to bear, so many men to bear these days, and some outside of this culture, this value system might think, well, hide what? I mean, yeah, I don't tell my wife about that, or what? Boys will be boys, guys do this. But we hold a value system and a belief system that we carry, which is, this in our faith, it's law of chastity, right? But it's sexual purity, right? And the sanctity of sexual acts. And this goes against what we believe is God's will for sexuality, right? And so to carry that for so many years and to never be able to share or tell that to anyone. And I would say, you know, there's no one that kind of walks out and is, well, maybe I'm wrong, but I'd say most people walk out and are proud of, yeah, I watch porn every day. That's me. I just, and they just share that with everybody they want to share it with, and they're just so happy about it. I think that most people understand, yeah, at least this is a waste of my time or a waste of my energy, my potential, or it's not a good use of my energy. And then on the higher end, right, of the shame and the guilt and the fear, it is, I hide this at all costs because if anybody found out, what would they think of me? I know for me, throughout my teenage years, it was just very unclear. Like I hid it even from myself, right, that this was going on. let alone ever talking to anybody else about it. And I was very privileged to have a father who was a pioneer in this field of porn addiction recovery. You know, heck, he wrote The Drug of the New Millennium, right? I mean, he was going around the world speaking to people about this. So I knew that he knew about it. I just didn't know how to approach him about it. Didn't feel safe to do that. Now, I was a very anxious child, right? But I didn't really even want to accept that it was an issue for me in the first place. I think that took me several years to come to the conclusion this is a problem.
Mhm.
And I do have an addiction. This thing, because I just heard the word addiction over years. I didn't know what it meant or what it felt like until I experienced it, you know?
Yeah, it takes a long time, and like the progressive nature of it, of the how often it's occurring and what it's overtaking in a life. So, you mentioned the different spectrums of usages and beliefs around it, and those that may not hold the same value system with it, but they may divulge, like you said, even arrogantly, that I watch this, it's perfectly normal, it's part of everybody's life. And I think that outside of just holding a value system around it, I don't think that something can be inherently bad for you just based on the belief that it's bad.
Mm.
I think that it's bad or it's not. So, and you've done a lot on your podcast to talk about neuroscience and the effect of the dopamine system and those things. So, pornography or any type of addictive behavior, compulsion, is going to have an effect over time of creating a pattern in the brain where it starts to love less and less and less and less of life. Like those things that it starts to strip away are because the brain is really good at forming a pattern of going back to saying, oh, I have a way to find this release and this relief in a really simple, low effort way. So for me, it manifested over 25 years of, I grew up, I loved sports. I sang, I painted, I participated in, golfing, and I had a passion about those things. And slowly over time, my passion for each of those things faded.
Hmm. Yes. And it goes back to, at this point, once this episode launches, it will have been last month. The theme was base and noble pleasures, right? We want rewiring the nervous system. And when we pursue base pleasures, whether it be porn, which is one of the primary ones these days, that's incredibly intense and it spikes dopamine to unnaturally high levels. I had Patrick DeVos on the podcast that talked about research that says pornography spikes dopamine to 300% the level of natural and normal sex, right? So there's obviously something very unnatural about it, and there's no effort or investment from my end at all, which is extremely important when it comes to how the nervous system functions and how hormones and neurotransmitters function. I have to give equal effort or pain into something, investment into something, to get out a reward in order for it to develop me and as a human being and for me to feel balanced. If that's not the case with things like porn or social media, or to be frank, video games or TV, these other means of entertainment, now I am imbalancing my nervous system, my hormones, my dopaminergic system. And Todd, you actually have quite a bit of background on this. Maybe we'll dive into that a bit. But I know that you're intimately involved with understanding how dopamine works. Maybe you want to speak to that a bit as far as this balance in the system that you've come to understand both for yourself and through this research, into what dopamine's about, what is it for, and what happens to us when we imbalance it so deeply with things like porn.
Yeah, so dopamine is a basic neurotransmitter that we've come to know, I think, in contemporary terms as the pleasure chemical, which probably has given it a little bit of a misnomer. It's not that it's not associated with pleasure, but it is also associated with pursuit. So as Dr. Anna Lemke discusses as a teeter-totter, a really simple metaphor for it, to say when you have something that spikes dopamine, then you have these gremlins that jump on the opposite side to seek homeostasis in the brain by pushing on the pain side. So the effect of pushing on the pain side is that it sets us below the dopamine, the baseline. So it actually drops below your baseline level. So when you're low like that, it's crash, cravings, all the things that we would get normally, even with like eating a Snickers bar. And then in the afternoon, all of a sudden I'm really sluggish. And your brain's saying, well, I know exactly where to get that high again. And it can be really easy to get it. So it has everything to do with behavioral adaptations towards things that become meaningful or the brain recognizes as I can get this type of high by doing this. But it turns into, rather than a seeking for pleasure, it's actually more of an escape from pain. It's like I'm trying to get out of this state. And so I repeatedly go back to the easiest way to do that, which is why, like, the same thing that you said is that pornography and social media, just for simple uses, are high stimulus, low effort type of a thing that you can get really quickly. So going to the gym and running for 30 minutes, or going outside and walking, or painting a picture, or playing the piano for 30 minutes, those types of things, you have to do for much, much longer periods of time to get even close to the same reaction. So over time, the brain is just learning this mechanism of saying, I don't need to do those things. I don't get the same type of enjoyment out of that anymore. At least neurochemically, I don't. But the effect of that over time is that the progression ends up dropping your dopamine levels below baseline persistently, where you're almost always in a pain state. You're never able to get back to where it was. So now you've got anxiety, you've got depression, all of those things that set in because you've basically dysregulated the system by creating a persistence where now the neurotransmitters have created a resistance. The receptors have shut down.
Yes, and worth saying that ADD and ADHD, right? These are dopamine dysregulation challenges in part, right? So if we have these things that are depleting dopamine, we're often going to have symptoms of I can't focus, I'm not motivated, right? I'm not present. I know that is how my life was throughout all my teenage years and up into my early 20s. I couldn't focus. I had all these ambitions and dreams and things that I wanted to do. I felt that drive, but I didn't feel the neurological and psychological capacity to do that, right? My expectations were far higher than, and what I felt like I was capable was far higher than what I actually was. And as I came off of porn and I came off of social media was never much of a thing for me, but I played a lot of video games. I watched a lot of TV. As I decreased these and decreased junk food and processed foods, all these things that are dopamine, they lead to dopamine dysregulation. They spike dopamine to unnaturally high levels and you dip below baseline. I found I was more motivated to work. I had this dream of building a business. I was more motivated to write content and to come up with ideas and to start to think of these things. I literally lacked the capacity to even strategize or approach the idea of something like a business because I didn't have the focus or the motivation for it. I just couldn't do it. Was that some of your experience as well with your addiction, or what were some of the greatest ways that it impacted your life and the things you noticed improved once you started to get sober?
I mean, like even getting sober. So for me, it's now been since July 18th, 2021. So
Yeah,
I feel
awesome.
fortunate enough to feel like I haven't relapsed since then. So that doesn't happen for everybody, but I relapsed 1,000 times before that. Said
Mhm.
this is the last time. So it's not like I didn't go through that experience.
Yeah.
There's always a relapse until there's not one.
Yeah, exactly.
So my last was prior to July 18th of 2021. So it's been 4 years and 8 months. And
It's awesome, man.
that's a blessing, like in a way that in some ways, just the accomplishment of it is climbing a mountain. That you can say you accomplished something, because in that 4 years and 8 months, it has not been easy.
Mhm.
It's
You say it's climbing a mountain. It's like climbing a mountain every day.
yeah, right.
Peaking at the end of, you fall asleep and you're like, I peaked the mountain. I made it. And then you got to do the same thing the next day until you just get strong enough to, now I'm a mountain climber, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So those, during that 4 years and 8 months, it's been a lot of unwinding, unlearning, and then also adding understanding to the layers of the story that I'm now telling. So back when I said my story didn't start to be told until 4 years and 8 months ago, it lived underneath me. I didn't know how to speak it, didn't know what to say about it, didn't know what drove it, all the different whys that were there. So that 4 years and 8 months, but like to your point of focus and motivation, I mean, I struggled with that through the 4 years and 8 months of still trying to say, can I get up in the morning and put in straight without stopping 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours of work and feel like I'm falling back in love with this as meaningful to me. And, there's been other challenges in that 4 years as well that they're just a hit to the ego and hit to spending a year, a lifetime of thinking that I could have been so much more, so that by itself, Jake, has been, it's gotten a little bit better, but I've had moments where it was very difficult to not hold myself in contempt and think that I lived a wasted life.
Yes. And Todd, I'll say, as someone who, knows you on a personal level, you're somebody who truly gives off light and is authentic and is a powerful person to talk to with powerful ideas. And so you've, as you and I well know, insight is born from pain, right? And you've been through that pain. We all have our own crosses to bear, and God bears them with us. And so I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. Not my worst enemy, as they say, but you do learn through pain. Before we get back to the show, I want to take a few minutes to share a story of one of my clients. Because if you're someone who's been battling with porn addiction yourself and feeling stuck, I think that you'll relate to this. My client Gabe came to me discouraged about the impact his porn use was having on his life. It got in the way of his productivity at work, made him feel more distant from his wife and kids, and caused him to experience brain fog, lack of motivation, and a lack of confidence. All things that I relate to deeply and personally. Gabe was a good man. He valued his family, served his community, he had a good job, and he had ambition. He could even get a decent streak of sobriety sometimes, but nothing long-lasting. Gabe's problem was not discipline. It was a lack of knowledge and skill. He didn't understand how to regulate his emotions and train his nervous system properly, so the cravings, anger, and other painful emotions could be moved through effectively. By the time he finished my program, Gabe had 5 months of sobriety without a single relapse. His perspective on life had changed dramatically, and for the first time, he felt fully connected and in harmony with his principles and who he was. I'll share a few of his words directly. I would leave every session with Jake feeling like my eyes had been opened to a new level of understanding that changed my self-talk, my relationship with my spouse, and my ability to connect with my children. The program felt incrementally tailored to my needs and had the exact building blocks I needed to live a sober lifestyle and mindset. I've kept in touch with Gabe since then. His success has continued, and he is now 7 months sober. Gabe's story is one of many men who've joined my intensive coaching program and experienced sobriety. If you want to join these men, dig deep, and finally be sober for good. Head to nomoredesire.com/program to learn more. Back to the show. I love what you've told. Unless there's anything else you want to share about your story, I want to kind of move into this topic of Christian culture and this addiction, and specifically our relationship to sexuality, right? Because this is a really, really hard one. And it's part of me says that I shouldn't even talk about it because it's almost like, would the right word be defaming my religion? But I think it's very important and very, it isn't inherent to the faith as far as sexual shame, I think. But it's definitely, grown through some of the things that we teach in some of the parts of our culture, especially you and I growing up in, you grew up in the LDS faith. Is that right, Todd? Or am I assuming? Yes. So we both grew up in the LDS faith, very conservative Christian culture. We kind of, so many of us carry this idea of sex is bad, sex is dangerous, sex is something that I shouldn't talk about and it's secret. What was your understanding of that growing up? Again, this is not shared explicitly. Sex is dangerous and bad. That's not the thing, but it's definitely carried. So what was your experience of that growing up?
The messaging and how it's delivered, it tends to demand that interpretation.
Right.
There's not much other direction it can go. So as I've thought about this, it frequently comes back to me for the same type of issue, is that how a story starts, the origin of it, matters a lot. So what I mean by that is if you change the plot, you change everything else in a story. So we tend to, in the Christian world, start from an origin story that goes something like, we're bad and God is mad. And so the project becomes, I'm unacceptable. And we start to define certain things that make us increasingly or problematic, less acceptable to God. And now I need to have through some type of project of repentance and intervention with Jesus on there to make me more acceptable to God again. Okay, so it starts from a place where it's entirely centered around me. It's pretty consumed and obsessed with, I'm unacceptable, and now I need to prove my acceptability through some type of process. So for me, that's grown into the exact 180-degree backward story. So I don't think that that's an expansive story. That's a really narrow, constricting story.
Mm-hmm.
It has very little possibility of doing what we would say commonly in Jesus's words, when you lose yourself, you find yourself. So most of the idea of saying worshiping God or looking to God or having a relationship with God inherently is suggesting that I'm too small to make meaning all by myself. I need to point myself to a much bigger, greater good than just me. But if you start with a story that is deficient, that I understand myself as just depraved and deficient from the beginning, and now I've got to find a way to become worthy in his eyes again, then it's a pretty exhausting project.
Yeah, it is. And I think, again, this concept of we are sinners, right? I think we really misinterpret this. I've had to do a lot of work myself on these concepts of, I am a sinner, right? And the story in the Bible of the man who beats his chest, right, and says, "God, forgive me, for I am a sinner." And how do I reconcile this with belief in kind of God's divinity that is within me. And I think it's been extremely powerful for me. You know how much I love IFS, and you and I have had multiple conversations surrounding IFS and parts work. And when I start to understand myself in parts, the work of Dr. Richard Schwartz has been revolutionary in saying there is a self with a capital S. In other words, this spirit of light and goodness, the God image that is within every single one of us. I carry that as a child of God. And then I've got all these parts, right, of the mind and the body, and what Richard Schwartz would describe as like little spiritual beings that kind of make up who I am. Sounds like a strange concept to a lot of us when we're unfamiliar with it, but when we have experiences with it, it becomes very helpful, very powerful. These parts of, if we go to Eastern philosophy, parts of the ego, right, show up in all sorts of roles with all sorts of ideas. And they try to protect us through control, and they try to help us escape through addiction or addictive behaviors. This transformed my perspective when it comes to things like sexuality, because there are parts of me that would indulge in sexuality endlessly, right, if given the opportunity, but not because they're bad, but because they appreciate and love expression and the creativity and the beauty and the pleasure of the presence of this wonderful experience. And they are actually polarized with and acting in opposition to very extreme parts of me that would suppress all feeling of sexuality or any type of indulgence. And these two parts fight and they war inside of me. And I was always taught, at least growing up, that the answer was willpower. The answer is self-control. And we say it all the time, right? Just control yourself, have self-control, have discipline. That is what is going to make you sexually pure. When in reality, it's learning how to get to know these parts of me that are involved in my sexuality and kind of understand them and eventually come to love them and help them calm and move into roles that are better for me, that are actually helpful. But in order to do that, I've got to work with these self-critics inside me too that have become so extreme as kind of spiritualizer parts, as Jenna Remersma talks about in her book, Altogether You. They get this idea that being a good person is about the rule. It's about following the rules, and it's about being pure, and it's about doing everything perfect all the time. And when I have this constant state of this, as you say, focus on self, right, rather than being expansive and connected to love and connected to God and a greater cause, now it's all about what's my performance like. And that state of kind of egoic performance yields itself very well to addiction because I'm overwhelmed by trying constantly to perform and to be worthy of that love. Where I think the truth is closer to the love's already there. It's actually already inside me.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see those parts, because when I come back to responding to how you explain IFS, and I love that conversation because it's both fascinating and also very pragmatic. It's very useful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so much so.
If you switch the plot of the story, okay, so one of the things in the founding Christian, the Bible story is the garden. Okay, and most of the time we have interpreted it as something went wrong, that mankind stepped away from, and then because of that, they were thrust out of the presence of God as a result of that. So there are many interpretations, and there are lots of useful ways to talk about the story. But one that is rarely discussed is that the garden was part of what was finished on the earth in the story. The rest of it was unfinished. And there's a sense that God was sending us off, like we do our own children, to extend the garden, to become creators, co-creators. So we're working in collaboration with God on this project that is not about me at all. It's actually about me becoming a creator. somebody that I can go build and add what I see in the garden out into the rest of the world. And the fact of the matter is that along the way, we have to learn a lot about ourselves as to what serves as barriers for me to engage in that project. You know, there,
Yes.
and most of the barrier for me is the one that tends to turn it back in on me. That there's a huge barrier to say, well, if I have to prove that I'm worthy, that I'm acceptable, then everything I do is going to be in some effort to say something about me, to tell a story about me.
Yep.
It's never going to be to extend or to love life, to love other people. It's going to be an effort to extract love.
Yeah, right. And I'm reflecting, Todd, as you're saying that, how again, there's if you start from that basis of, well, I have to earn God's love. Now, just that underlying belief and assumption, now I believe, oh, I'm inherently bad and inherently flawed, right? So therefore, sexuality, right? If I then label that as inherently bad and flawed, now I'm approaching things from what I would not say is a place of spirit or a place of God or a place of the higher self, which is of truth and love. And I think that the truth is God created sexuality. It is good and it is beautiful. And God created us, as you're saying, to be co-creators with Him, that He actually uh, inherently values us, you know, in a way that cannot be, cannot be quantified, right? But again, why do we get this so wrong? In faith and religion, the place where I think that this should be taught the most. And I think it is being shared more and more, to be fair.
Yeah.
But have we gotten it wrong for so long? What do you think about that?
I think that relationship is difficult, and the fundamental story of humanity is about relationship. But so much of our lives being in relationship is trying to get someone else to do what I want them to do, which is another me project. So
Right.
it turns into coercion. It turns into lots of different tools that I can shortcut my way into getting you to behave in the best ways possible. So behavior we want good behavior. We want to learn to do good. But how we get there often creates the exact problem that we're trying to get rid of.
Yes, exactly. Always. And it's the nature of the ego, nature of the natural man. We cause the problem we're seeking to fix by trying to force and control things. Right.
Yeah, I mean, and you and I, if we have a conversation that runs into a point of disagreement, then we can go one of two ways. We can either really draw on each other and listen carefully to what the other person is saying, and then ask, like, well, how did you come to that conclusion? Or we can fight each other. We can put up our hands and start to push. And the harder I push on your hand, the harder you'll push back.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yes.
that's Newton's third law of physics right there. Equal and opposite forces.
And it's so fascinating how that really does work that way, both internally and externally, right? When it comes to something like pornography or sexual addiction, it is born of this internal polarization. There are multiple factors we could talk about biologically and neurologically and things, but from a psychological standpoint, and for that matter, a nervous system standpoint, when we understand dorsal versus sympathetic, but we won't get into all that necessarily. But these parts inside me that war and they fight, right? And one part says, you need to be pure and you need to always think pure thoughts and never have sexual thoughts of any nature. And then another part that says, I want to express this without bounds and go crazy. Now I have the grounds for sexual addiction, right? Same way in a family, where there's a father who's extremely strict and overly authoritarian, right, with no sense of compassion or questions for his children, but is only demanding and controlling, he not always, but often will have kids that then rebel, right? Whether when they're in the house or after they leave, they will then go into impulsive actions, develop addictions, go crazy, party, etc. Because something about, I don't know, the human spirit, the way that our minds work, it just demands that. Whereas balance, and like you're saying, the openness, getting to know and understand, being curious about each other or about our own, the parts of our own minds, we then move into a place of collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
And again, coming back to kind of this idea of sexual purity, that's where this gets difficult, right? Because it's good, I think, to be sexually pure and to aim for that, right? To live in a chaste way, but it so easily diverts into this performance and this demanding for perfection from an internal standpoint. I should not desire sex, and if I do, there's something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's, again, what I grew up with, feeling that a lot. I know there's so many who have.
It's definitely what I absorbed, in my interpretation of it, whether it was intended or not. I think many have taken that. I think that that's the shortcut out of an anxiety born of a conversation that's difficult to have anyways. Well, and now it ends up being, let me just tell you what's forbidden, and then we can check that box off that we've had this conversation, and then I'll cross my fingers between now and when you're 20 or 25 or 30 that all goes well. And meanwhile, you have a storm going on inside of a boy at 10 to 12 where testosterone spikes. He's got this new part of his life that he didn't ask for. It's not like he made a deal with anything to say, hey, can you give me something that will just make me bigger and stronger? And by the way, it will also bring in these desires that I have no idea what to do with.
It'll make me feel completely unhinged and like I can't control any of my impulses, right?
So and then you just go silent on it, and the only message you have is just don't do it. Watch out. We'll give you the lines to avoid, and if you cross those lines, then the story is that you're now less acceptable to God.
Yes.
So, that's a shame message.
Mm-hmm.
And that message drives the whole problem underground. It doesn't help the surface. It doesn't give the courage to face life and the struggles in a shared way, because you and I both know the disease of addiction is the disease of isolation. It finds, it breeds and grows and thrives in isolation. So does shame. That's where shame leads everything. It is into secrecy and silence, and you add a layer of judgment to that, and it's going to flourish.
And so do you think, one of the answers for us, what has come up for me quite a bit in learning about just sexual education and how to, be a good parent as far as teaching our kids about this and about sexuality or about pornography and these things in a way that leads to something healthy, is just to have ongoing dialogues and conversation, to have it be a normal topic in the household. And that is something, again, I feel like if we go back to this kind of conflict on one side of the spectrum, people can just be like, oh yeah, being sexual is just part of being human. So go crazy, do whatever you want. And then on the other end, we have the don't talk about it. This is bad. We don't speak about that here. the straight and narrow path, right, as we call it, or the middle way, right, as it's spoken of in Eastern philosophy, I think one way of saying this is having that ongoing awareness, that ongoing dialogue, that kind of moving and flowing with the challenges and the pain and the difficulties of this is something that is a very powerful force, and it can potentially lead to devastation in your life. Like 100% true. If you become a victim to this part of you and it just pulls you along like what is it? Like a bull who has the ring around its nose, right? And you're being pulled. Nobody likes that experience. You don't want to be that bull, right? You want to be a master of your own mind. And I think that's when it comes to guys who aren't religious, that's one of the things that I work with them on. They're like, well, why should I do this? I get my wife's mad and whatever, but why should I do this? Do you want something to dominate you? No. You want to be a master of your own mind. And I think that's one point that God is sharing this in his truth, I think, is best I've come to understand it in some ways. I want you to have full agency. I want you to be able to make your own decisions and for this not to rule you. And so there are certain boundaries and limitations in which you need to act with this. But then he's also calling for the beauty and the expression of it. And that is, again, such a hard concept to wrestle with, right? Boundaried, but also it's beautiful and creative and good. Mm-hmm. I think it's difficult for us as human beings to understand what that means or how to navigate that.
It is really difficult. I think that one of the things that you think of electricity in general, and I would tend to think now about sexuality not as a moral thing, but as an amoral thing. So as a neutral topic, like if we just put it out there at first, electricity is a neutral topic. Okay. We don't come at the conversation around electricity as it's bad or good. We can say, okay, here's electricity. We have a way to harness it. Now, can we put it into some type of form that it can be useful? Yeah, yes, we can. It also can be quite dangerous and disastrous. So that allows the conversation to flow in both directions so we can explore a neutral thing that then we can see how it can become destructive, both self-destructive, but also relationally destructive. There's no question, like for someone to say that sexuality is just how we are, well, that's not untrue. And it is how we are, but the thing is, it's unique in that it's with other people. And the impact of sex is it's not just about pleasure. It's about emotions and spiritual realities and bodies and all of those things that come together that you say, well, if I end up using you as a person, where does that leave you as a person walking away from this experience? Where does it leave me as a person thinking that that's who I am? Is that I'm just using this? It's not an expression at all. It's a consuming thing. I'm consuming the other person to meet my needs.
And I think that inevitably impacts us, whether you want to refer to it spiritually or psychologically. If I'm using another person like that, whether via a screen or in the flesh, it's going to impact me psychologically. It's going to break me down and desensitize me, right? And it's going to get in the way of probably the most crucial thing that I have in my life, which is the ability to connect to other human beings, to feel relationally close to others. When I get in a habit of using others and viewing them as objects, now I can't connect. Now I can't feel others' emotions or my own or feel love. Then that is incredibly miserable. Yeah. As you say, regardless of your beliefs, right? And so, I think on that, it's not a message of if I struggle with pornography addiction, I'm a bad person. It's if you struggle with pornography addiction, that is leading to such deep wounds that need healing. It hurts. It's painful. And there was a previous podcast I did a while back about how porn is a self-inflicted abuse, right? We're continuously doing something that several parts of us disagree with doing in favor of other parts that are indulging in this to try to soothe us and to try to bring us escape and to try to balance our nervous systems. And it's not working. So the message from God, I think, would only be one of compassion, and that there's deeper reasons we're going to it.
Yeah, I think, I want to know what you think about a couple of things, but
Yeah.
let me just, I think this says it very, very well. It says, like a river that can either nourish cropland or destroy villages and flood, sexual desire itself exists beyond our categories of good and evil. Its potential for both creation and destruction makes it not immoral but amoral, a force of nature that demands understanding rather than judgment. Young males typically experience sexual desire as an almost overwhelming force, something that seems to arise from outside their conscious control. This isn't weakness or moral failure, it's biology doing exactly what evolution designed it to do. The challenge lies in developing the wisdom to channel this energy constructively while it's operating at full intensity. This is where many traditional approaches to sexual ethics have failed. By treating male sexual desire as inherently sinful or problematic, they create inner conflict rather than integration. The demon hand doesn't disappear through repression, it merely goes underground, often emerging in more problematic ways. True ethical development requires acknowledging both aspects, the tremendous creative power of sexuality and its potential for harm when unconsciously expressed.
I imagine you wrote that, Todd. Is that right?
Yeah, a while back.
So good. It's just fantastic. You're such a great writer, man. And I love it when you share those texts with me. And they're always like the last one you shared with me. I'm trying to become a faster reader, but you send it and I take like a week to get to it because I'm just like, oh man, I need to read it, but I just delay and delay and delay. So I want you to know that it's so meaningful to me and it's so good. But I think one of the places, and I agree with all that. Again, very well said. One of the places that we get so tripped up, and you're saying this, it is an energy that needs to be channeled. What does that mean? What is sexual energy, right? And there have been many thought leaders that talk about, and throughout, since ancient times, sexual energy is life energy, right? It is, we can use it to procreate, yes, and we can use it to pursue sexual relationship, but it's also a pure life energy, a passion, the energy for passion and pursuit, right? And action and
that's where Eros, the idea of Eros comes from, is it's more like as an energy force, as an outflowing force. It's not strictly meant to be like erotic, like in the sense that in our colloquial way of using it.
So powerful. See, and truths like that, I just wish were more broadly shared. I think we've lost a lot of those, which is why it's so crucial. You're very much a history buff, and you look into the ancient wisdom and things, both in inside and outside of religion, and that's a crucial concept. I just didn't know that. I remember the first place I was exposed to that was the idea of transmutation in the book Think and Grow Rich. It was the first place I read that. It's like chapter 5 or so. I don't know where it was, but anyway, he says, he talks about transmutation. He spends a bunch of time talking about that. I was like, what is this? What is going on? He's talking about using sexual energy for creating businesses and making money. And I'm just, what? That made no sense to me until I began experiencing that, because again, I was constantly releasing on a daily basis. So I had no idea the energy potential that was inside of me. And I think that's a crucial part of this conversation, right? Is, can I, especially as a parent, or in understanding this for myself and understanding it is the power of creation as a whole, life energy as a whole. How did you say it with Eros? What's I forget exactly how you put it. the original meaning of eros.
Yeah, it is more looked at as just an energy source, like an expression of that energy that comes from within. You said it though. It's a creative energy. It's actually a desire to create.
Yeah.
Of course, we've completely just flattened it out into nothing but procreation. But it's not just to sustain our species, but it's actually to sustain our species.
Right. Right. I love that. Yeah. And so harnessing that energy, that requires emotional regulation, right? It requires my ability to know how can I move through uncomfortable emotion, and how can I calm myself when I feel anger? How can I get in touch with fear and welcome it in and be with it for a while so I can understand what it is that I'm afraid of and move through that fear? Some of these things that I just had no clue were even connected to my cravings for pornography. And maybe people tried to share that with me and I just couldn't hear it, or maybe I just never heard that. I don't know if you were ever taught these things growing up or ever exposed to these ideas, or kind of how you came upon them yourself.
Yeah, and to be fair, you and me having a conversation as two adult males later in our life, looking backwards, is is considerably different than trying to interest a 12 or 13-year-old into saying, "Hey, do you want to explore and understand this energy that's happening inside of you?" There has to be a simpler way to let them in. But I think the biggest thing is normalizing the conversation, but it's not just normalizing it in words, it's actually normalizing it in just the bodily language that we carry around it. So, like, Jennifer Finlayson Fife gave an interesting example of this a couple of years ago, where she had a good friend that was explaining to her that she had her two sons that were like probably 9 and 11 with her in the grocery store. And they come to a checkout, which is generally lined with magazine covers, and some of which will have some type of scantily dressed people on it, right? So she's telling the story that when she came to the checkout and saw the magazines, that she put herself between her boys and the magazines as a barrier. And Jennifer says, you realize you're just making this worse, right?
And what was her response to that?
Yeah, she didn't really tell much of either story, other than Jennifer's just saying, if,
Right.
if you can't have a conversation with that son, it's like, yeah, do you find that attractive? Do you want to know why you do?
Right. It's, Mom, ew, gross.
But
Right.
her own anxiety about the whole subject sh-
Yes.
it tells her child, this is not a conversation I can have with my mom.
Mhm.
She's a
Exactly. Exactly. It's the fear that actually fuels the addiction.
Mhm.
And I think, again, that's something that's so paradoxical. That was hard for me to start to see, and I'm learning more about it all the time. But the fear behind the addiction, right? If I don't fear something, or fear if I'm not driven to something because I'm going through fear in my life, at least. Without fear, there's no addiction, because either I have grown up with this belief of sex is something that is so scary and unknowable, and I shouldn't think about it, and it's bad. And so fear, 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 which is all this intense emotion surrounding it, my mind gets channeled into it. And so now not only is there arousal, there's also fear. And then there's also shame. There's also all the grief of all the, you know, girls back in middle school and high school that, I never felt like I was good enough to be with, right? And all without all that, if you remove all that and you just have arousal, I think it's quite manageable. I think we can be present with and feel like, yeah, I'm aroused and cool. Okay. and be able to move on.
I love you bring up that because just this on Tuesday, I went and attended a 12 step one disclosure.
Okay. Yeah.
Just had the gentleman read his disclosure. There were like 5 of us there to listen and chime in, ask some questions. It's really a beautiful opportunity to both hear someone's story, but let them share it in a place where you can say everything that you think about yourself that you think is unworthy of care and have nobody flinch.
Mm.
Yeah, that's the moment in time where maybe something really powerful can start to happen, because every other time in life for me was like, look, if I let someone in on this part of me, they most certainly will think less of me, if not completely reject me. So everything about my belief is I can't risk this relationship by letting them in. But he as he read though, he used this arousal a lot, but and we had an interesting conversation that he was vilifying arousal itself.
Mm.
Like it wasn't just like the behavior that came from it. He was actually saying, I had a relationship to the idea of this biological fact that was already negative. So like, and again, Jennifer Finlayson Fife, she separates those two things to say, you have biology, so you have the physiological reaction that's happening, and then you have the psychology. So those two things are not the same thing, but they get
Yes.
they get tangled up. And so if I have something physiological that happens, but then I layer on top of that a belief about that, and then that generates a thought, and that generates an emotion, and that's all kind of an underlying spiral of shame that's supporting that, then it loops all the way back to that shame that you're feeling is uncomfortable, and it triggers the arousal again. Because
Yeah.
the brain is always saying, I want out of this shame. I want out of this pain. And so it's like, oh, let's generate this feeling, this physiological effect that will send you back to a place of relief. And then you'll feel bad about that again. And it will just, this negative feedback loop. So at some point, you've got to change the belief in there that to stop the cycle.
Yes.
If you believe arousal is a problem, it's going to feed itself.
Mm-hmm. Then it's a problem.
It's a problem. Yeah.
And it's not, as you and I, when we were discussing this episode, it is not just about conceptually or mentally understanding, oh, okay, sex is good. Sex is not bad. Sex is good. Got it. Right? That's not going to do anything, right?
No.
But to emotionally feel and believe it, and that's where IFS and parts work becomes so powerful, right? Or just deeply reflective journaling or meditation upon something, right? Or prayer, and the power of confession and getting in touch with what are all the things that I believe about this and why, right? And actually taking the time to get in touch with and feel through all of that, because something can't be cleared unless it's felt, right? I can only move past what I'm willing to fully embrace, which is just completely paradoxical.
So the interesting thing is, like, because it's a Christian podcast and people probably will recognize the terms, which I would tend to throw them out lightly sometimes because I think they come with a lot of baggage. And but the word repent
Yes.
is one that I think has been misconstrued all the way down to just an abandonment of behavior. So it's a correction of behavior, but it misses the etymology of the word itself as to where the problem starts. And even so, the word itself is metanoia, which is beyond the mind. It's to change the mind. So it's actually pointing directly at saying that there's something going on in our mind that is causing the problem. So, for instance, like if you just in a simple example of if your whole life you grew up thinking that homelessness was the fault of the people that are homeless, that they've made poor choices that landed them in that place. And then suddenly you go work for United Way and you find out a different story. That experience that you go through will be a repentance. It's changing your mind about something you previously misunderstood. So that's going to change your behavior downstream from that, because now you may look at policy different. You may look at those people different. You may be less fearful of walking up to somebody like that saying, hey, tell me a little bit about your life. Tell me what's going on here, as opposed to just stepping away from a really, really long arm and just judging them from a distance because you really know nothing about it. So that's a repentant thing. Well, for you and me, like, to come to any type of long-term sobriety, my therapist dug in on this deep to say, let's find the limiting beliefs. Let's find the places in your mind that repeatedly come back to, I need some type of relief from this, that it just keeps driving you back. So you and I talked about this on a previous walk on the creek path. That's
right.
I found
Always good times.
so fascinating that so often we think of behavior as a linear, just 2 points connected. One is knowledge and the other is incentive or reward. And if we know something is correct, for instance, I know it's good to eat well, or I know it's good to exercise, and then you give me some type of reward for doing that, the assumption is that we will therefore do it. And yet, we human beings do not do it. We act so far beneath our knowing. Okay. And I don't mean that like in a judgmental way. I mean that a lot of behavior is not driven from the things that we know. It's driven from something deeper inside of us, which when I heard it, he said that third point in the triangle is belief. And, and the word belief is the Latin for that is be as the suffix, meaning extra, like befriend, or what's another that starts with a suffix of B?
Bemoan. I don't know.
It's adding some emphasis to the latter word to say it's extra this. So, and leaf comes from the Latin term creare, which means from the heart or the heart. So you've got this extra heart. So it's something that actually is embedded in you in like a systematic way. So it's subconscious flowing through you, not at the conscious level, but something beneath that belief is embedded in my system. And so what's causing me not to go to the gym? Likely because I believe something about a failure in the past, or I believe that I'm not worthy of the gym because I'm 60 pounds overweight and the people there are fit. I have so many beliefs that in spite of my knowledge, I can't do it, even if you give me the biggest reward. So until we address and understand the dominoes that come before the behavior that's blocking that behavior, which that's exactly what my therapist worked with me on to say, it's the behavior is a symptom. I mean,
right.
It's what we see, but there are so many things that are driving that before that are kind of making this, it's not a matter of willpower, it's just a matter of program.
Yeah.
You hit a button, a trigger, and then that sequence begins.
Mm-hmm. And you have to reprogram. And in a previous episode, I talked about a lengthy process of one way of doing that, right? Something I'll have the men in my program do is to focus on a desired belief, right? Something that's optimal. Like, for instance, I can experience sexual arousal and welcome it and be at peace with it, right? So I have them kind of repeat that a few times and focus on it. And then just notice what counter beliefs or resistance comes up to that.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the guys in my program, that's not a problem for. So we don't go that direction because they're like, well, yeah, sex is fine. But most of the guys that I work with, they carry these burdened beliefs surrounding sexuality, right? The guys who don't, they have other reasons they've been going to it, right? And this is not playing into that. So once you notice what comes up, then recognizing, working through it, understanding what these parts of you, why they're motivated to think those different ways and engaging with them like they're little individuals, getting underneath to the feelings of fear or the feelings of shame or grief that you carry, and engaging with all of that on an emotion from an emotional standpoint and being with it for a while.
What
I
happens?
have to feel through that.
What happens for you personally when when that desire, some type of physiological thing shows up, and you just breathe and pause and be with it?
Mm. So I actually had an experience. Um, I shared this in a previous episode, but it was unexpected. I was doing like a hot cold kind of thing. So I've heard that heat mixed with cold and back and forth is really great for the nervous system and helps you build resilience and the ability to stay with discomfort. And so I got in an extremely hot bath, hot tub style, and it was probably a little overdone. But I'm extreme sometimes. So as I got in it, I actually had a deeply overwhelming feeling. I guess what I was going through emotionally that day and things. Arousal and craving came up in a very strong and intense way, unexpectedly. And so I said, okay, here's this. And I did what I teach, right? And it's never an easy practice, but I witnessed and I welcomed and I allowed, right? It's not here to control me. It's actually just a feeling and a desire. And as I just welcomed it and focused on it internally and said, okay, here's all this feeling and this arousal and these cravings, and they're all coming up. I'm allowing it to come in like it's someone who's come to talk with me, to share a message with me and sit down with me. Share your message. What are you saying? And there are some extreme things said, right? And so I actually speak them out loud and I'm just witnessing and I'm seeking to understand. And then there's another voice that comes up in me that's freaking out that I'm feeling any of these feelings of arousal. This is bad. You shouldn't feel this. Oh my gosh, what if this takes us over? This could ruin us. This, right? Blah, 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 on and on. And things into, right? I've been a sober for 11 years. What if this overtakes me and then that will ruin my career and that will lead to this and that and all the guys who depend on me and my family and, right? And so I'm actually just speaking all that and I'm just recognizing all that. And I'm saying, hey, thanks for showing up for me, man. I know you really care about my life, this part of me, right? You really want me to live a life of integrity. And I appreciate that. And I can appreciate the arousal part just the same because it's saying, I want pleasure and escape and for you. I want you to enjoy the moment and to be present. Those are some of the deeper desires of adventure and excitement, right? And as I engage with those, then I come down to things I'm going through in my current life, emotions that I'm carrying in my nervous system, right? Fears that I have about whatever's going on with work or with family, or how am I showing up as a dad or a husband, or a fight that my wife and I had, right? Whatever that is, an argument that came up, like, what are those things? And then engaging with all that. And the kid inside me that feels all these messages about sexuality, and I come to understand him and all the burdens he carries. And I moved through that for about 15 minutes. And what always happens if you're willing to engage with all that, you then come to that place of just deep spaciousness that the Buddhists refer to, and this place of self, this place of spirit, and it's just love. And you're just present. I'm just present, and I just understand myself so much better, and have built a deeper relationship with myself. I'm not, and it's. That's hard to describe in words,
Yeah.
honestly, because it's a beautiful experience, you know?
I think almost all language like we use is metaphor at some level.
Yeah.
Like one
Yep.
of the metaphors that probably has seemed useful to me that it seems, because my experience is similar that way, is first of all, being in a pool and holding a beach ball down is eventually futile.
Right.
And the harder you push it down and try and hold it down, the more power it gains. And
Mhm.
eventually it shoots out sideways with a vengeance. It will
Mhm.
find a way. So you like describing this experience of being with it is to stop pushing on the beach ball. Relax into it. Uh, Stop fighting it, because the war is actually, at some point, the war that you have is your willpower against the program. So it's the elephant and the rider. And
Mhm.
your
Right.
willpower is much, much smaller than the program that's been developed. So it will always exhaust itself. It will lose that battle. So stop fighting. The other is like blowing bubbles. You blow bubbles outside, you have fun with it. And so much of the time we spend our lives running around trying to pop the bubbles instead of just let them fall, let them be. And they'll fall and they'll hit the ground and they'll dissipate.
Mhm.
Just,
And I think, that brings you back to, an experience that's a bit awkward to share perhaps and vulnerable, but I'm gonna share it because I think it's meaningful. And that's, you know, for me, I carry a lot of burdens sexually, right? From the years of all the the addiction and the beliefs of shame and fear surrounding sexuality. I've had to do so much work um, in cultivating different beliefs about my body, right? And about the human body as a whole. Right. And when I look at myself in the mirror, when I'm naked in the mirror, what do I feel?
mhm.
Right. I've had to work so much on that. And, you know, um, for me personally, somewhat recently, my wife and I were engaging sexually, and afterwards, I had, well, throughout, I had these emotions coming up of shame and of fear, right? The shame of I shouldn't feel these things, and this is dangerous, and this is bad, and then all these feelings of, to be frank, the things throughout my teenage years and the ways that I used those abilities that didn't respect myself and it didn't respect other people. And all that stuff started to hit me. And in the past, before I started practicing this mindfulness and this welcoming and this parts where this allowing, I would try to suppress that and stuff that down and be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't want to feel any of this. Like, I'm with my wife right now. This stuff should not come up. And I just let it come up, right? And I was just there for these parts of me they're just trying to bring messages forward. Like, hey, there's so much stuff in here that's so screwed up, and we really need you to see it. Not out of self-punishment, but actually to be able to heal and work through it. And so as all of that came up, a profound grief hit me as these memories came up, and how it sounds strange and it's complex, but how this experience within marriage was so good and so beautiful in comparison to just this depravity and this self-centered pleasure seeking and these relationships that were just so broken, right? With these different women. The expansive chasm between these two experiences was so palpable for me at that moment. I just began to cry. And for a lot of people, they're just like, that's weird. You're like sitting next to your wife, like crying after sex. And yeah, it is weird. It is weird. And I welcome that forward too. There's a part of me that felt like this is awkward. Stop being awkward. Right. So I'm going to let that part in too. It's okay for me to, part of me to say it's awkward. And I just said, I'm sorry this is happening right now. Could you just hold my hand? I can't tell you in words what's going on. Right. And she did. She held my hand. And I just cried, man. I just grieved. Grief had to move through me for all the depravity and the ways that I just mistreated
Mhm.
my body and these parts of me and engaged in this in ways that didn't honor me. That's healing. Moving through that pain is healing. And just another layer was peeled back where I could just let go of that just a little more to feel more whole, both sexually and as a person, right? And closer in my relationship to my wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for saying that.
Yeah, some people will probably hear it and they'll be like, that's weird. But hopefully there's others that it will be meaningful too.
The thing that's interesting about my time in attending 12-step meetings, it's very akin to yours and my conversations today, but also walking together. It's unique in that our humanity gets exposed, and that itself is what brings us closer together. It's not, the object is not to get rid of our humanness. It's to actually have it show up in a way that we actually learn how to care for that. There's no sense in which love makes any sense if something's perfectly lovable. Until it's actually tested. For instance, a plant growing outside. Like if you didn't have to do anything to make it grow, to contribute to its growth, then you might take credit. You might be tempted to take credit for something that you had nothing to do with at all. But you also, like, when it grows and it's not performing, it's not doing exactly how you hoped it would. It's so counterintuitive that we would never think that the answer to helping a bush that's not growing properly, to hit it with a shovel. We wouldn't think that punishing it would be the way to help it grow, but we kind of do that to ourselves. We think that hating ourselves forward is the most powerful way to do it. But it's when that plant shows up that way, that's an opportunity to care for it. And you may have to understand it. And I don't mean some weird way to talk to it, but you might have to do some research. You might have to look at its leaves or its branches, or you might have to do some soil type of analysis. Find out what's going on underneath the ground so that then you'll understand how to treat it. But if you just abandon it altogether and just say you're worthless, then that's not learning to love at all. It's demanding that you love it. I mean, like, and now it gets hard because now love is work. It's not just standing back and letting all the good stuff happen with no effort at all.
So well said, Todd. Thanks for being here on the show, man. It's a privilege to have you, and I think that this conversation will be very helpful for people. So thanks, man.
Yeah, I will leave one thing with you, and you'll edit stuff. But I think one of the things that repeatedly comes out to me is that relationship is it's the bread of life. It's to be in companionship and to seek intimacy, and what I mean by that is to know and be known. I mean, it's the longing of the human spirit, and the misappropriation or misuse of sexuality is betraying that desire, because it's not really about intimacy at all. But that being said, trust is the kind of link in relationships, but oftentimes we think of trust as kind of a hierarchical thing. We think of it as an authority frame, as I trust you because you're an authority on a subject, and so I'll just do what you tell me to do. But I don't, that's missing the underlying part of trust, which is rupture and repair. So you have little kids right now. I've been there. I don't anymore. But I learned this long ago when listening to an episode that has stuck with me. He said, if you do everything you can in your life to safeguard him from falling ever, and I mean physically, he never has a bobble, then he'll never fully trust you because he'll never know that you'll be there when he falls down. So full trust is not just about you creating safety. It's being there when he falls down and bumps his knee, hits his head, to console, to instruct, to give wisdom. Telling you a story of your full humanity is the development of trust. It takes trust to know that someone's going to respond well with it. Trust is built in the rupture and then the repair. Without those things, we end up kind of in a fear of abandonment, an avoidant type of approach to life, because I never know. I mean, I have no idea, no reference point to say, if I tell you this part about me, or if I fall, or I show you my humanity, I have no experience to tell me that you're going to pick me up well. In fact, I have a lot of messages that say that you won't.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Very powerful.
Thank you very much, my friend.
Yeah. And we need to do that for those around us and ourselves,
For sure.
It's good. It's good, man. Thanks so much, Todd. Appreciate you coming on, brother.
Yeah. Love you, man.
You too, man. Thanks for listening to No More Desire. It's a genuine blessing for me to do the work that I do, and I wouldn't be able to do it without you, my listeners, so thank you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, do me a favor. Follow this podcast, hit the notification bell, and shoot me a rating. The more people who do this, the more men this podcast will reach. So take a few minutes of your time and hit those buttons. And if you want to take your sobriety to the next level, check out my free workshop, The 8 Keys to Lose Your Desire for Porn, or my free ebook, The 10 Tools to Conquer Cravings. These are specialized pieces of content that will give you practical exercises and applied solutions to overcome porn addiction. And you can find them at nomordesire.com. As a listener of the No More Desire podcast, you are part of a worldwide movement of men who are breaking free of porn to live more impactful, meaningful, and selfless lives. So keep learning, keep growing, and keep building that recovery mindset and lifestyle. God bless. Everything expressed on the No More Desire podcast are the opinions of the host and participants, and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of a qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.